and the
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Dennis Wakabayashi. Welcome to the Customer Experience as a Game Changer, How It Makes a Difference. I'm your host, Dennis Wakabayashi. I'm currently looking at great stories and companies around the world as a global voice of CX. It's my honor to be here with Cemantica. I'm a huge fan of Cemantica. I believe Cemantica will be one of the things that transforms our practice as customer experience professionals, as well as brings business leaders closer to us in the conversation so that transformation can take one step further in both growth and acceleration for businesses around the world. If you're new here and you're just learning how to scale CX, everyone is just at the forefront of this. So you're in the right place. If you're a practitioner who's already making traction within your organization, or you're a leader in the space helping businesses transform, you're still in the right place. I'm so excited today to have Michael Hinshaw, Graham Clark, Eytan, Hattem, and Bob Osmond here to share their thoughts with you, show you some demos, and get you along your further down the path of customer experience and journey mapping. Just by way of a little background, Michael Hinshaw, he's one of the top CX influencers in the world. And he is also a best-selling author who wrote the book, co-authored the book, Smart Customers, Stupid Companies, Why Only Intelligent Companies Will Thrive and How to Be One of Them. So Michael is going to be sharing alongside Graham Clark, who is a multi-channel CX transformations practitioner. He's working closely with brands all around the world in this space, like Qualtrics, Medallia, Usermind, and Alterna CX. Both Michael and Graham are going to share with you the insights from real-world experiences that they're having, taking journey maps and making them scale within an organization. So that'll be a great conversation. Following that, Eytan, co-founder of Cemantica, who's also coincidentally has a background and expertise in CRM, big data, business analytics, cloud and mobile platforms, will be getting us hands-on, taking us into the platform of Cemantica, putting to work the ideas that Michael and Graham will be sharing with us. Following that, I'm going to get a chance to dig in with Bob Osmond himself, Chief Customer Service Experience Officer of Innovative CX Solutions. He's a best-selling author, and in my mind, one of the best, if not the most forefront leading mind on the practice of bringing ROI into an organization through the lens of customer experience. So with that said, I'd like to just open it up. And before I do, a little housekeeping, if you're in the audience, and you have questions, please put them in the chat window. We will be answering these questions in real time. If we do not get to all the questions during this 1 hour we have together, we will be following up after to answer your questions, but feel free to be engaging, interactive, throw your questions in the chat as we go along. You're going to see a lot of good information, but it might be a little complex. You may want to break it down a little, and we're happy to do that in this interactive presentation. Okay, with that said, I'd like to welcome, please join me in welcoming Michael Hinshaw and Graham Clark to the virtual stage. Hello, gentlemen. How are you today?
Hey, great.
Hey, Dennis. Doing well,
Awesome.
thank you. Thanks for having us.
Awesome. You know, we had a little chance to talk as we led up to the show. I'm so fascinated with the work you're doing. It's compelling to me because I think a lot of us in the industry have been doing journey maps for maybe the last 5 years or so. We've all had our fair share of Post-it notes, but we've recognized that these Post-it notes are hugely valuable in aligning stakeholders and setting the stage, but they're a little bit challenged in scaling into operations, really giving us that traction into transformation. So I'm just wondering if one of you might tell us, you know, what are you doing today in the real world with a customer that can put this in context for our audience?
Sure. Well, Dennis, I'll go ahead and kick this off again. Thanks for having us. And interestingly, journey maps have been something that we organizationally have been doing for about 20 years. Personas and journey maps to understand essentially what we originally called the customer relationship lifecycle. In the last 5 years or so, we've shifted from a purely in-person Post-it led exercise to also bringing in tools that allow us to essentially digitally expand to do global workshops to gather information electronically. And from that perspective, we still, at least until 2 years ago, we're doing in-person workshops as well. But there's a significant need in organizations to understand a global perspective, not just flying everyone into one place and essentially doing it based on who's available that week, but being able to have a broader participation, because many of our clients are, cross geographies, global organizations. So just a couple of examples to your specific question. One recent client we're working with right now is a major biotech, and we're doing journey mapping exercises for them where they had high level global maps, but they didn't account for kind of key regional differences. Specifically, North America is the group that we're working with. So as they're looking at customers and patients and doctors and how, those relationships connected the dots, essentially, they didn't have cross-organizational templates or a system in place to really understand what are the relationships with cross regions, audiences, or CX teams even. Another example of an organization we're working with is a large global technology software company. And this is around employee experience specifically, but a similar challenge, which is essentially standardizing cross business unit and cross geography playbooks and templates and a system for organization-wide implementation of maps. And when I say implementation of maps, it means finding ways to prioritize the initiatives that come out of those maps, understand how employee experience relates to customer experience, and turn them into an actionable initiative to drive business results in a priority framework, given that you can't do everything at once. So where do you focus?
Michael, can I jump in there?
Of course, please do.
Michael, wow, you said a lot. We have so many buzzwords in our industry. And why do all of our buzzwords have to have so many syllables? Transformational, organizational, all these things. I think what I heard you saying about your work to introduce journey mapping into organizations, it's something that's on all of our minds. We know as practitioners or maybe as leaders in organizations, we've started to hear that journey maps are valuable. But I've often found that it's hard to introduce that conversation into the right place in an organization so that the framework and the value from journey maps becomes evident quickly for leaders so that we can start down the truest path of CX. Can you just tell us, in those two examples, did those businesses come to you and say, Michael, give us journey maps? Or is there an earlier conversation that tells us as CX professionals where to begin to introduce the conversation of journey mapping?
Yeah, I have to say that most of our client organizations are fairly far down the road conceptually when it comes to journey mapping specifically. That's the entry point for many organizations in terms of understanding experience. So it's rare, I would say, that a company comes to us and really has no idea. Typically, there's some understanding of what they're trying to accomplish. They believe the journey mapping may be a solution. They may have tried that internally or with their agency or their design firm or a consultancy that isn't necessarily a CX firm. But where they struggle is in understanding the linkages and connections between journey maps and in understanding how to action those maps in ways that drive business results.
Got it. So that's really fascinating. So you're really instrumental in bringing these touch points to life in the context of the overall journey and strategy for the organization. Can you tell us a little bit about how you get to those touch points and prioritize the thinking so that the journey map is valuable?
Yeah, there's so first off, touch points and the way we classify touch points or articulate them is the specific interactions between organization and customers. So we map touch points, understanding which ones work well, which don't, but it needs to be done in the context of journey stages. So which touch points roll up to which journey stages, and how well is the organization performing and moving clients, customers, patients, right, from one stage of the journey to the next, as that customer is in the process of trying to accomplish their goals. And then we look at the all up journey, right? So did the customer accomplish their goals across that entire journey? So really it's less about activating or understanding individual touch point. It's about understanding the context of all these things in relationship to one another within the framework of what are our customers trying to accomplish and how well are we doing at helping them accomplish those things.
Wow, exactly. Smart strategy. And, speaking of contextualizing and putting this stuff to work, Graham, I know you're an expert at this. Can you tell us a little bit about bringing these touch points into focus and maybe even toss in a little background on the difference between service design and customer experience journeys?
Sure. So I think kind of as Michael was kind of alluding, so the world of journey mapping is all about, and the world of CX is all about outside in thinking, right? So the perspective of your business from the customer's perspective, and CX as a discipline has clearly evolved. I think most people in our client base 5, 6, 7 years ago, journey mapping tended to be a point activity. There's a small team of people, usually in a particular place with a particular customer experience around a particular product, yada, yada. That's evolving so that more and more organizations are really applying CX as a enterprise, often global enterprise capability. And so the complexities have increased, and especially as we focus on something that we often refer to as the digital first, but not digital only multi-channel customer of today. And you think about digital transformation, global organizations trying to create standardized digital capabilities enabled by platforms like Adobe and Insight and all the rest of the stuff. And they're enacting these global transformation processes. So when we look at a journey map as an outside-in representation of the experience, we also look at it the other way around, which is an inside-out representation about how the capabilities, the systems, the people, processes, data, technology that deliver those customer experiences deliver on those interactions, those touch points. And in addition to that, organizations considering how transformational digital technologies like the buzzwords of today are artificial intelligence, machine learning, robotic process automation. So how can those impact it? And then you talked about service design. So if you think about the customer journey as being the way the customer sees the experience, inside out, the operating processes across the key 3 functions of customer experience, marketing, sales, and service, right? Service design is about how do you design the internal processes in order to on those customer expectations. And when we think about kind of best practices, one thing is, even just that level of complexity in a particular experience can be overwhelming for organizations when you start, trying to bring together different groups across a global platform and do this at enterprise scale, global. That's where Cemantica comes in, because you really can't do this without a tool like Cemantica that helps allow multiple constituencies across the world even to engage in journey mapping allows people to interact and change journey maps and modify journey maps on different time zones, right? Because they're not all going to get together on a call like this. And also deals with some pretty critical issues that our clients are looking at, which is, how do you version? You think about a current state, future state journey map where there may be different stages of future state associated with transformational milestones. And then a persona or a journey map is supposed to be a living thing. And so, the 2022 Q1 version might not be the same as the 2022 Q4 version. So as CX and journey mapping and persona modeling becomes, more and more of a true enterprise contributor to the organization, managing all those different versions is absolutely critical. And then I think our most forward-thinking clients, all our clients are most forward-thinking, but the ones that are most forward-thinking are the most forward-thinking, are really focusing in on the idea of playbooks. How do you start standardizing and what people do, who does things, where's the information, where are the knowledge bases, where are the repositories? And then another best practice that we've seen, which is really starting to come to the fore, is training, right? So if you've got these global organizations of people who may never have met the other people they're participating with and may never meet them, how do you train people as to what these various tools are for, how a tool like Cemantica plays into that, how people should be operating, where do they find the templates and all the other components that really make this a true impactful journey. We're really excited because, MCorp's been kind of traveling this journey with our clients for 20 years, as Michael said. And so, I think in the last 3 or 4 years, we've really seen the CX techniques, become a huge impactor in business performance. And that's ultimately what we're in the business of doing, which is helping our clients to develop the operational muscle to be able to direct impact their business operating performance by using these techniques.
Graham, thank you for laying out so eloquently the complexity, but also the scale that we're all facing. You also touched upon something that I find interesting, which is we need to move the practice of journey mapping higher and higher in an organization so that we can have the vantage point to manage multi-user access across multiple countries, introduce several personas, deal with the stages of CX while bringing the tactical perspective to each of these touch points, which I think is exactly, Eytan, what you're going to show us today. I'd like to hand it over to you, Eytan. Can you sort of visually, for our visual learners, take us through exactly what Michael and Graham have described so that we can get a feel for how do we actually make this real for ourselves?
Okay, thanks, Dennis. I think the best way to show is to tell a story. So let me just share my screen. This is the Cemantica platform, but I want to show the Cemantica platform through the story of Sally, which is a CX manager in a very big international retail company that has 52 sites around the world and has teams that are spread across different countries, speaking different languages, using different currencies. I think that Sally has two main challenges. The first challenge is how do you organize your customer journey map and your personas in a manner that will be easy to use and easy to access, because she has more than 50 customer journeys, she has service blueprints, she has 15 different persona segments. So how do you access that and organize it across your teams? And the second thing is, how do you collaborate? How do you collaborate on an international context with people around the world that are connected from different places and need to work on the same customer journeys and personas? So taking Sally has taken all the different customer journeys and organized it in Cemantica in different project folders. Some folders are organized per department, some per country, some per specific product, specific touch point, or a specific theme. Sally is driving one big initiative that's called direct consumer. The retail company that she works for is now want to open the B2C market while they were very focused on B2B. So she has one very big project to manage. Opening this project, this is where she regrouped different customer journeys and personas. Some of the customer journeys are level 0 journeys. This is what we call the master journeys. And some of them are level 1 journeys, which are focusing on a specific stage in the journey and are giving more details about it. Looking at these 4 journeys, Sally has one current state journey, which is describing how things are today, and 3 future state journeys, each one of them describing how the journey will look like in several months from now. So for example, there's a future state for 6 months, for 12 months, and for 18 months. Let's have a look at the current customer journey of Sally and understand how she is using this journey to collaborate with her different teams. So first of all, Graham and Michael were speaking about the complexity. So we know the complexity already comes with the fact that you can have multiple personas that are associated to the same customer journey. This is already one area of complexity. Every persona needs to tell a different story. This is what Cemantica does. We are able on the platform to tell one story for every persona by keeping the same frame. Looking at the frame of stages, we are connecting journeys between them. So Sally can create the tree of customer journeys from the master journeys to the more detailed journeys. So what you see here are journeys that are linked into the master map. So when I click on this icon, I have a drill down to the specific journey map that is focusing only on the research phase or stage. Then I can create in that way a hierarchy, an endless hierarchy of maps, which will give me my tree from master map to sub journeys that are zooming on specific areas of the journey. When Sally needs to work with different teams, they all need to collaborate on the same platform. Cemantica is a collaborative platform that allows users from different countries to access the same customer journey map with different types of role. We have 3 roles: viewer, which is read-only, contributor, and owner. Each one of these roles has different privileges to modify the map and delete things on the map. So we can actually collaborate together on the customer journey from different locations in different time zones and update. Everything that is updated on the customer journey map in the interactions or everywhere else is audited in an audit trail and logged, so you can always see what happened. One of the big elements of complexity is the ability to manage a sentiment map of multiple personas. For example, Cemantica allows Sally to view 2 segments that are connected to this direct-to-consumer current state journey map, and she can compare the sentiment of John Davis to the behavior of Maria Arcano. When there are gaps between the 2 personas, she then can analyze what works for John Davis that doesn't work for Maria Arcano. This is an example of how you manage multiple sentiments of personas on the same sentiment map. Scrolling down, every customer journey map is finished with a list of actions, right? We are ideating opportunities, and then we are designing actions that will deliver these initiatives. But to do that, we need a project management solution. We need an app that will help us manage the different action items across the globe. And this is where Cemantica is using the CX Action app. The CX Action app of Cemantica is a tool that was designed to manage the execution part of customer journey mapping. Large organizations can have hundreds of different initiatives that came out from the journey mapping process. The big question is, how do you prioritize all these initiatives and how do you manage them on time? The CX Action app was designed to pull in from the journey map all the initiatives and regroup them in project buckets, assigning each one of them to the customer journey stage. Then what we do in the cost-benefit analysis matrix in the CX Action app is that we assess the benefits this initiative is going to bring to customer experience versus the cost of implementation and the effort to put this initiative in place for the organization. The global score is the one helping us prioritize, choosing the initiatives that will bring the most in terms of customer experience with the minimal effort for the organization. These are then worked with an agile methodology where I can see all the different tasks that I have to do on a Kanban view. So Sally can associate, attribute, assign tasks to our team members around the world, and they access the exact same view to know where does the project stand, who is working on what, and what is the status of each one of the tasks that they are collaborating together. Again, the key in complex organization is collaboration. One, and second is monitoring. How do you monitor progress of people you don't see and people that work in different time zones? And this is why we've created the dashboard, which monitors the progress of the different projects. So I am as Sally that has a team in several countries working on different initiatives on different customer journeys. I can have a global view and see what is the level of progress of my different initiatives. I can see displayed per project owner, per department, but very important, I can also zoom on a specific stage in my journey. For example, if I want to know everything that is associated to the support state of the customer journey, I can see the different action items that are currently being taken care of with the person that is in charge to work them. This gives me a global view as a CX manager and control over my operation. So I don't need to ask people what they're doing. I can view everything from the dashboard here. So to summarize, customer journey mapping in complex organization is about being able to build a tree of customer journeys and a tree of personas that are associated to every journey, telling their story. And then it's about collaboration, being able to transform the insights into actionable items that you can manage across the organization. Over to you, Dennis.
Thank you so much, Eytan. You know, having a platform that allows us to bring these practices into an organization, engage everyone who can or wants to be involved, and moving it into a system where leaders can watch the progress of transformation. It's always stunning to me to see the advancements of Cemantica. You know, Eytan, this is all pretty much new since the last time I saw the platform. So I was texting Esther, I was just saying, I'm so amazed at the progress. And so audience, now that we've had a chance to see that there is a way to manage all of this complexity, the multiple trees, the stakeholders, I think we can't lose sight of ROI. How do we portray journey mapping, customer experience in the context of the corporate conversation so that folks like the CFOs or the CEOs can see that what we're doing truly matters? And to talk more about that, I'd like to welcome Bob Azman. Bob, you're doing a lot of work in this area. You're doing it both on the technical and the development side, but also in the cultural and the communication side with senior leaders at organizations. Can you tell us, just to put us in context, about some of the maybe a big project you're working on that is bringing ROI conversations and delivery of ROI to fruition?
Thanks, Dennis. The ROI of CX is a really hot topic right now for many experienced professionals. So let me take it out of the CX profession for just a minute and think about, as business leaders, if we wanted, an enterprise software investment, if we wanted to get a new facility, if we wanted to buy a piece of equipment to produce a product, we'd go into the C-suite loaded with all kinds of information and data and rock solid, so that we were ready for any question that was posed to us by the C-suite to get that investment. And we'd be very specific about it. We'd say, it's going to take us 3 years. It's going to pay back this amount. The investment will produce X products, X results. So when we look at it from an experienced professional side, we need to talk that language of the C-suite. And I want to go beyond just thinking about this in terms of, well, if we invest in the CX platform, we'll get an increase of 5 points in our NPS. Great. The C-suite next question is what? Okay, how does that translate to revenue? How does that translate to profitability? How does it produce the kinds of things that enterprise software or piece of equipment would do? So what I've found is that we've got to start talking the language. We've got to use terms like ROI and profitability and revenue. And why would you do this project over that project? What's my advantage over somebody else's project? Because as I think Michael said, we need to connect the dots. And as experienced professionals asking for investment, asking for the utilization of the type of software that we just saw Eytan talk about, we really need to talk that language and to deliver against the ROI commitments. And that would be the second part, I'd say, Dennis, is we need to be able to stand up and say, yes, hold me accountable. This is the ROI and measure me against that ROI.
Thank you so much. You know, we've said so many things about the complexity of CX, and now you've really opened the door to conversations with C-suite leaders who are really managing the profitability of a business. I love that context, but Bob, even though we have those conversations, we have to be able to demonstrate this somehow and prioritize it. How do you do that?
It's another great question, Dennis. And I think what you saw here today and what you've heard already discussed is journey maps can really do that for you. The whole concept around touch point mapping and journey mapping can really help you start focusing in on what's working and what's not working in your organization. Too often when I'm working with large organizations, I see that they have 20 or 25 priorities that they're trying to get accomplished. Well, I haven't yet seen a company, and somebody can prove me wrong, but I haven't seen a company yet that can do 20 or 25 priorities all at once and either afford them from a resource standpoint or just simply the bandwidth to do all of that. And so when we look at journey mapping and we look at touch points and we say, because when we go on that, beyond that, what we're really looking at is, well, what are we doing well and what's not going well? And that can really pinpoint those projects that Eytan talked about and say, this is where we need to focus. This is our highest priority. Yes, everything else is important. But if we can get these 3 to 5 things done, and then we tie that journey map to the value, I think that's where executives will start listening. And frankly, sometimes it's the middle level management group that kind of looks at us strangely and says, yeah, this too shall pass, just give it another few months and it'll go away. So we have to engage them in that process too by saying, look at the journey maps, where are the things going well and support those, where are they needing improvement and how do we improve and tie that value directly. And that's where, in my opinion, a C-suite comes forward and says, wait a minute, you're saying that these 3 items that you've identified in the mapping exercise are causing this kind of friction with our customers. And if we improve them with this investment, this is the value we're going to get. Now you're talking their language.
Love that. You know, what it made me think, and I'm certain is on the minds of our audience today, is, Bob, yes, we have to have these conversations. Yes, we have to speak the language, but because you're doing it, and I'm, you know what, maybe I'm asking for myself, Bob. I work in a lot of different industries myself. I've had the opportunity to work on customer experience journey mapping for Wells Fargo, AT&T, McDonald's, a lot of different companies. And I'm always curious, who are the key leaders, middle management, senior management in your practice? Are you seeing a trend of like, here are the 3 leaders we really have to speak to get the ROI conversation to mature? Are you seeing that? What can we tell our audience of, hey, you know you need to have these conversations. Here's who I'm seeing needs to be at the table.
So Dennis, when we talk about doing journey mapping, what's one of the key elements we always talk about? Engage cross-functional colleagues in the process. Don't just do it in our own department, but what I call look left and look right. Who, as a department leader, who am I impacting to my right and who am I impacting to my left? And what are the inputs that I'm getting from those departments? So right from the get-go, we talk about cross-functionality in a journey mapping process to ensure that we're getting a complete view of all the functions. And of course, we need that voice of the customer, but in the context of your question, it's that cross-functional view. So what I've seen start evolving is I've heard a lot of talk about, well, we have to engage the CMO or we have to engage the operations leadership. And I always say all functions, all levels need to be represented, but you also don't want 50 people in a room. But the other trend I'm beginning to see a lot more of, Dennis, is the head of IT, because everything we do is probably got IT tied to it these days, and engaging IT early in the process. And the other person that I've seen much more involved, and we're trying to get into the process, is the CHRO, because we talk a lot about training, but it's really the behaviors we're trying to change. We can do all the training on the new processes, but we're also talking about changing behaviors, and involving the CHRO or various members of the HR staff, I think has been integral. So, and the last person I would say is that we don't always think about is somebody from a financial standpoint, perhaps not the CFO, but the head of finance. I always have said in the operations that I've run, the three people I want at my table all the time as business leaders are finance, HR, and technology. And I think the same applies on a journey mapping standpoint.
Bob, so insightful. You know, you're right. And the multi-dimensional aspect of the budget holders that are necessary to collaborate in a successful transformation program requires each of those stakeholders to have visibility into their touch point and their impact to revenue or impact into cost savings. And what I really love is that Cemantica does that. Eytan, can you show us how each of these multi-dimensional stakeholders can look at ROI in a consistent way across the organization?
Okay, sure. So this is the Cemantica application. This is where we are managing all the part of CX program management and ROI. And I wanted to continue with the same example of Sally that was speaking before, the CX manager that is managing an international activity in multi-locations. So we spoke about two challenges that she had, which were how to organize the journeys and personas and how to collaborate across different countries with her teammates. Now I want to set up two different challenges that Sally has. One is, how does she measure the ROI of the different initiatives that were prioritized through the cost-benefit analysis matrix? And the second challenge she has is how to manage the CX program from A to Z. We know that there are things happening before you do customer journey mapping and things happening after you do customer journey mapping. This is why we've designed in Cemantica something we call the CX program cycle, which is a container for all the different activities that you need to run as part of your CX program. I'm not going to go through everything, but you can see there's a process of designing a CX strategy, assessing the maturity of the organization, doing persona profiling and customer journey mapping, ideating solutions. These are the opportunities that we want to put in place, and then building the action plan. Obviously, that when we have a customer journey, we need to validate the hypothesis of the journey. So we need to collect voice of the customer data into the platform to make sure that what we have built as a persona behavior is coherent with the voice of the customer data. But we also need to make sure that the initiatives that we put in place are bringing the right value. And when we say value, I want to take the example for Sally, which is implementing a project that calls service tablets that are going to be installed in stores in order to allow customers to return damaged goods in store using these tablets self-service. Let's take a look at this project, which is one of many projects that she is managing. The project is associated with different team members and is also associated to different customer journeys. We know that this project is impacting the current state journey and also the future state journey in 6 months. This is the journey impacted. We also know that every project needs to have a business case because Sally needs to show her managers that the initiatives she is currently running in the company are bringing their fruits. And what is fruits? We translate it into business levers and financial levers. We know that every project has business objectives, targets like improving customer experience. We know that implementing the tablets will also improve employee experience that are suffering today from the fact customers are taking a long time, or the whole process is very heavy to return goods at store. And on the other side, on the right side, we have the financial levers. This is where we are measuring the financial impact of the different measures we want to put in place. So we actually define for every project goals. For example, number of returns is a goal. Customer satisfaction is supposed to be impacted. The SLA reception, so the whole process of taking the goods and replacing them, is something we need to take into consideration. Each one of these measures and the goals we associate to are measured in real time. We are pulling in information to measure the actual performance of each one of the measures. We are then translating the actual into financial impact. Each measure in the system is giving Sally the indication of the financial impact it contributes to the project. The aggregation of all of them together is what brings the global financial impact of this project on the different CX initiatives. Sally has a complex organization. The different measures are managed in different countries in different currencies. Cemantica platform is converting everything to the currency the user chooses. So Sally can see all her data in US dollars. As another person in another country using the same Cemantica platform can choose to see all the information in euros, GBP, or any other currency. After we're managing this project, we want to see the outcomes of all of this. The outcomes, as I said, are split to two. There are benefits which are related to the business, measured by metrics like customer effort score, customer satisfaction, NPS. This is what you see here on this dashboard. It's the ability to analyze the different metrics over time, per persona, comparing the behavior of two personas in terms of CX matrix, per touch point, and per customer journey. I can put two customer journey, overlay them, and see how they behave in each one of the matrix I am managing here. As Bob was saying, employee experience is another part of the story. Cemantica manages both the customer matrix as well as the employee matrix. So you can filter and see and zoom on a specific touch point, a specific matrix over a specific timeline in a journey over a persona. It gives you all the abilities to zoom in the business levers. The second thing that is very important in the monitoring process is the goals management. This is where we want to see the financial impact of my different projects on the business goals that I have set. So what I can see through this dashboard, I am able to see the financial contribution of each one of my 6 initiatives that I have prioritized. And what I can see is that I have initiatives that are not bringing a lot of money. So maybe I should invest more in the ones that are driving good revenues versus investing time and efforts in initiatives that are not driving revenue. This dashboard is very good when you want to present to management. You have the financial impact also by measure. For example, churn rate, reducing the churn rate is impacting very positively the bottom line. Well, maybe the number of returns is less impacting in terms of financials. We have different statistics here and the ability to filter on every project initiative to zoom just on a specific project and to know how they are impacting the bottom line results of the company. To summarize, Sally works in a complex and international organization, working in multi-countries, multi-currencies, multi-cultures, speaking different languages. In Cemantica, everyone can work in their own language and own currency. People can collaborate around the world. And the financial impact of the initiatives they are carrying is monitored in Cemantica. So Sally can have a global view on the performance of her CX program, and based on that, take decisions to change initiatives, and to get more budgets to her operation when she presents to management. Back to you, Dennis.
Thank you, Eytan. Wow. You know, there's so much that we've covered today. It's such an exciting conversation that we're having, and there's so many moving pieces. I want to just say, Eytan, I applaud Cemantica for the work that you're doing. We all struggle with how to connect all these pieces, and we appreciate you spending so much time and energy to hear from the leaders, work with businesses, and help us close these gaps as all of us push to drive transformation at businesses all over the world. So thank you, sir. Thanks to Cemantica. Thank you, audience. You're sending in quite a few great questions. So I'd like to just dive into the questions now, gentlemen. The first question that we have is from Patty. Patty, shouts out, thank you for the question. The question is, and I think this goes over to you, Bob. Patty wants to know that while the three leaders you talked about make sense, what about engaging the CRO? One of the outcomes of CX should be to increase revenue. And I would also just say also on there, I've also been curious, in addition to the CRO, it feels like customer care teams have such a big voice in CX. You know, can you just, I know that you addressed the key divisions of an organization, but can you speak a little bit about talking to the CRO or the head of customer care?
Absolutely, and that is a great question. I guess I was coming from the standpoint that naturally you would involve the CRO, so it's a great call out to ensure that you are. One of the things that I look at in organizations, and it pertains also, Dennis, to your question about customer care, is what's the operating mechanisms that occur between the departments? So we may be journey mapping the customer's journey through the process, but what are the operating mechanisms that I use to interact with sales? So for example, if I'm working with the head of sales and I'm the head of customer care, how do we interact? How do I process your orders? How do I answer inquiries? How do I support the sales team that has questions? And a lot of times those operating mechanisms are either through tribal knowledge or just don't exist. And documenting those really has a way of improving how we work together. So engaging the CRO along with the service organization, and I'll just put a plug in here. I've run global service organizations for 25 years, and there is so much customer information in that customer care organization that we can tap into that is so important to drive what we're trying to do in the experienced professional. Don't overlook it. So great call out, Dennis, on that too.
Thank you, sir. And I would just say, just by way of connecting those dots, Eytan, is it safe to say, you know, you started this vision with connecting voice of the customer data and customer care teams to the journey map? So I just want to underscore, there are a lot of connectors or APIs, right, from Cemantica that connect the customer care organization right in, or can you elaborate on that?
Yes, we have something like 70 different connectors that are pre-built connectors to different systems like Microsoft Dynamics, Salesforce, Marketo, SurveyMonkey, MailChimp, you know, you name it. We are bringing the data in and then connecting it to the customer journey map. And in case there is no connector, we have an API and we are building a custom connector to the system of the customer.
That's good to know. And one of the reasons why I like the digital journey mapping revolution that's happening. Hey, while I have you, Eytan, we have a question from Mike who's wondering how AI is being integrated into journey mapping. Can you speak to that?
Yes, I didn't have time to speak about that, but there are a couple of AI mechanisms in the platform. One of them is analyzing sentiment of feedback that is flowing into the system. So you can just put raw data into the platform and it will produce a sentiment level. The second AI mechanism that works in journey mapping is personas. When you want to connect customers to persona segments, we have an AI mechanism in the system that scans the customer database and associates automatically the relevant customers to the relevant persona, saving you time of segmentation and doing all kinds of queries to get to the right, segmentation. And the third one, which we are working on, is to generate the journey from the data. So having a dynamic journey that comes from the data together with the customer journey that you're building in workshops. And I think that that would be the next thing for me in AI of journey mapping.
Wow. Wow. It's so nice to see all of this complexity being helping it. It's nice to see AI helping us process this vast amount of information that we have about customers on our organization. So, all right, on to the next question. Thank you, Eytan. Graham, can you speak to Tarek's question? How high up should the journey be? And once done, how deep should we go, since every stage could have journeys within them?
So I think I kind of pivot to a problem that's existed in the CX world. So, and by the way, we've contributed to both a solution and the problem on this. So, producing amazing journey maps that are like 14 feet long, right, and completely useless. But are they amazing? Yes, they are. So journeys have to be useful. And so in order to make them useful, typically you'll have, master journey, and then you'll have individual journeys for individual stages within that journey. And that hierarchy can continue rippling down. And plus, Eytan mentioned earlier, and we talked about, multiple persona associated with the journey. What are the variances for that? We've seen organizations where they have a journey for a particular customer, a series of touch points. But when you look at their global operating, you mentioned service design, right? But a different operating organizational structure in their Southeast Asia division versus their Northern Europe division versus their Canada division. And so that complexity, you have to find a way to make that consumable and useful. And so journey hierarchies, obviously the real answer to the question is, the right level of fidelity that allows it to be useful for the organization. I don't know, Michael was kind of smiling because he's been through this too. And I probably should throw over to him as even more of an expert on some of this stuff than I am. Michael, what do you throw in?
Yeah, thanks, Graham. And Graham, I think you did a good job kind of articulating the goal of what level of the organization, how deep does the map go? And it's really around, what's useful, right? So if you're a senior executive, that 14-foot map, well, I would argue that 14-foot map has never been entirely useful except for very, very deep down in the org. But you need to have something that's easily consumable, and the different functions within the organization can look at and see where the problems are occurring, where the opportunities exist. But as you get closer, using Graham and our other British colleagues' phrase, as you get closer to the coalface, it gets more and more detailed. Right, as you get closer to actually implementing and improving different channels across different parts of the organization, then greater detail is required. But the higher up in the organization you go, typically speaking, the simpler the maps need to be, and the more pointed the messaging around those maps should be.
I love that. Between the two of you, you've given us context and you've given us vision. Thank you for that. We have I just want to get to some of these other valuable questions from the audience. I might even field a couple of these. Natasha, you said, if we have a voice of the customer program, can you upload the feedback to the journey to show the scores per touch point? I'll just go ahead and say yes. Cemantica is fantastic at that, and it really built the initial first generations of the platform on that very thing. So yes. We have another question from Sophie, who wants to know, Eytan, does a person or a leader have to deploy all the modules of Cemantica all at once, or can they just approach the process from the modules that are important to their key stakeholders and evolve that engagement as they become more mature?
Yeah, usually companies will just take it step by step. You can't deploy everything at once. You're buying the modules that you need, and you can grow with the platform as you evolve in your maturity. Because as Michael, Graham, and Bob were expressing, this is a journey of maturity, of culture, of change management. So it is definitely the way Cemantica was designed, to start small and to grow bigger, and so you can scale with the platform.
Awesome, thank you. Hey, Bob. Camilla wants to know, what are the prerequisites in terms of maturity, alignment, and standardization of operations, meaning data, technology tools, to be able to plug different regions into the platform or into a program?
So I kind of think the answer to the question is in the question, Dennis, and that is you do need to kind of step back and do some initial standardization so that you have it consistent across regions. And whether it's regions or I've been involved with companies that we've done a lot of acquisitions and everybody brings a different set of data, everybody brings a different standardization, and bringing that together into some form of standardization that then we can turn around and plug it into the platform. Although I think the platform, as you've seen, is extremely flexible in its ability to do that. But some initial standardization, I think, is important to align the operations, and all the operations will be at different levels of maturity. But if you standardize to some extent, you level that maturity out.
Fair enough. I think that's right. I mean, there's always different places to engage, and folks who are starting to build bridges of standardization across platforms or colleagues, they certainly are a great place to start. Thank you, sir. Maddie's interested in Cemantica and the employee experience view, and wondering if you can get the same sort of ROI stories, outcome analysis, but from the experience, the employee experience perspective. And I think what that question really is it's touching on this notion that we're all waking up to, which is the employee experience has everything to do with the customer experience, and being able to map the intersection between what we do in an organization for our customers and look at the financial analysis around that is becoming ever more important. I think I'll just toss this over to you, Bob. Bob, do you see that as a viable 2022 mature POV, employee experience ROI, and then over to you, Eytan, to verify that that's just something that is also inherent in Cemantica? Bob?
There's no question we need. Years ago, Dennis, we said what? Happy employees equal happy customers. That's almost too simplified. It's so much more important than that. How we recruit from the minute we talk about customer journeys, from the minute the customer is a prospect. What about the minute the employee is a prospect to become an employee of ours? So a candidate, recruiting, training, how we onboard, how we support them in their journey once they're in the organization. And there are studies out there that show that how we measure employee experience through attrition, through satisfaction levels, through the voice of the employee are so critical to driving a better experience. So absolutely, we've got to do more of that. And Eytan, I'll turn it over to you.
I think Graham wanted to say something about it.
Actually, I was going to go where Bob went. I mean, Dennis was talking about linking employee experience and customer experience, but we're in the era of the great resignation, upgrade, whatever the words you want to throw to it. I think there is a relationship between employee experience and customer experience. What we've been seeing in the last 4 or 5 years specifically is more and more companies kind of taking the concepts and techniques of CX and recognizing that they have exactly the same, and in some cases more important challenge as far as employees are concerned. And now we're seeing organizations starting to look at business partners, because great employees are hard to find and keep. Great business partners are hard to find and keep. And it's this idea that it's experience management all up, where every stakeholder in the business needs to be considered. We're waiting for the first client to come and do investor experience, because guess what? Great investors are hard to find and keep too. So it's this idea that we're recognizing all the stakeholders in the business and everybody has an experience. And then to your point, Dennis, they're also all interlinked, and that's foundational to, I think, where we're going to go over the next few years in the CX and XM world.
Great points, Graham. Eytan, can you just verify that you're looking in the same place and your tool is going to continue to enhance this conversation?
Yes, definitely. So everything, all the capabilities that I showed are relevant also for employee experience. And I think both of them are combined together. So we measure in the same way the matrix for employee experience as well as the ROI for the projects. So we see them together. We are not measuring them separately. We combine them together in a project. It will require a bit more explanation, but globally speaking, the answer is yes.
Fantastic. This has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. Thank you, audience, for your insightful and engaging questions. If we did not answer your question in today's event, Cemantica will follow up with you with direct answers to your questions. Again, Michael, Graham, Eytan, Bob, fantastic conversation. It's been a pleasure to be your host. And with that said, we'll say goodbye for today.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.